Welcome to Nintendo Voice Chat for the week of November 10th, 2016. I am your host, Jose Otero, and this is IGN's Nintendo Show. This is our 332nd episode,
Jeez.
I believe, which is something to talk about. But joining me this week, the one and the only on the show, Schneider.
Thanks. Hey, Jose.
How's it going? Yeah,
I'm very excited about the big round number we're celebrating today.
Oh, yeah.
Today.
No, totally.
Good.
No, it's a lot of episodes, man. We should start throwing more parties or something. Of course, you can watch episodes of Nintendo Voice Chat on YouTube, which hopefully you're doing right now. And if not, you should check it out, youtube.com/Nintendo Voice Chat. Really easy thing to do. And you can also leave us a review like, let's see, Harris left us on iTunes. He called us the best Nintendo-related podcast around, which was very nice of him. I've been listening to IGN's Nintendo Show for almost 10 years, since the early days of the Wii. And I can honestly say that it's currently the best it's ever been. And he credits us for a lot of the combination of entertainment, professionalism that we bring to every discussion. He's tried others. He likes us. Thank you so much for that, Harris. We really appreciate it. I'm paraphrasing / summarizing. Why are you smiling?
That's nice. No, I'm happy
so
that
wide.
somebody likes the show. That's good.
Oh, okay. Are you scared nobody likes the show?
No. I'm always happy to be on the show. It's nice bit of escapism in these
especially from your job
yeah.
as GM.
Exactly from my
overlord
job.
of all things.
No, it's been a long week, but no, I'm ready to talk Nintendo, man.
Okay,
Come on,
let's start. All right,
let's hear what's going on.
First thing that's going on in more recent news is that Nintendo has not given up on Miitomo.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Did you think they would?
I'm not sure. I know that when it came out, I was certain it was a platform that was going to continue to evolve. What I didn't know is that November 10th or November 9th, last night, that platform, it would take that long to evolve that platform. So they put out a big 2.0 update that has a bunch of stuff. Now, what's in it? So you can send messages to friends now directly. Your Mii will actually leave the house when he does that and go over to that friend's house to deliver it. Or you can send a sidekick. I could apparently make another Mii and task them with going out to do that. You customize your room. Surprise, we call this. You can customize your room by changing the wallpaper or the flooring. They also have that you can post your own photos, your Mii photos that you've taken in the room. But that's where things get weird, because the first slot to do that is free. If you want to buy additional slots to put up a photo that you've edited, 99 cents per slot, and there's 2 slots per wall.
All right.
Okay. So then there is Style Central, Answer Central. These are both areas where either you're showing off outfits or you are answering global questions, just like they've done before. And I went over one of them already. You can make sidekick characters. Apparently the app is smaller now. It's not quite as large as it was taking up on your phone. I haven't seen the comparison. That's just according to what they've put out. But here's the thing. Before we get into this, during Nintendo's second quarter, president of the company, Tatsumi Kimishima, said, they've released Miitomo in March, which is what they projected, what they promised. He said they're close to reaching 15 million users, which is nice, even though the title hasn't had that much activity. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. He also said at that time, quote, "The title has not been impactful from a profit perspective, but the trends have been largely according to our expectation."
I'm surprised. I thought the Miitomo story ended so quickly. You know, certainly from my circle of friends, which may not be representative, of course, of the target audience. It feels like the story died down so quickly. And like the updates that you describe now, the stuff we talked about in the first week, hey, we hope they follow up with a customizable room. That kind of felt like, this kind of stuff feels like what could have sustained the discussion around Miitomo on a weekly basis, like where this could have kept me coming back. But like so many, I held my finger on the app and said X after a while, right? Because I wasn't using it. Yeah. And, certainly kids who download a lot more apps than we do and constantly swap out apps probably are long gone from the app as well and won't see these updates. But, I mean, it's cool that they're committed to it. I got to think that, given the low buzz, given the low profitability, and like charging $1 to hang a picture on your wall is not going to suddenly like make print money here.
No, yeah, and I think that's been the story, and I think you're right, that over the course of these few months, the things that we have most been attracted to was, hey, there's Splatoon items, hey, there's Zelda items, hey, there's Metroid items, but it hasn't been enough to keep us there.
Yeah,
I know some friends who check every day. They get their Miitomo coins and then they're out because they want to spend those coins on something, depending on what they are. But yeah, the story quickly fizzled out. I agree with you. I do see this though as a play. I think this is just a timed play for Super Mario Run. Next month, Mario Run is coming out. They have not given this game a date, but they said December. Nintendo is known for that cross promotion. They are known for basically if one thing, that's my phone. If one thing comes out, they try to promote their other stuff. And on mobile, the story is going to be, okay, if Mario Run is really good, look at this really cool app. By the way, you can check out this thing. And now that other thing they're pointing to is more complete.
No, I agree. I think it's a good story. Certainly for people who have never tried the app, suddenly they will find, a much more full-featured feature set. Of course, the trick with Miitomo is like, unlike Mario Run, you absolutely need friends for it to work, right? Like it is a community app, and those can quickly rise and quickly die. And I do feel like we're more at the die end for this app.
Sure,
but maybe what they're building here can serve as a platform on one of the other machines, right? Like we don't yet know what anything on Switch will look like. We don't know what the interface will be. Remember how different the Wii to Wii U was. The Wii U with the startup screen with all the little Miis running around. This story fits right into that progression where you're making the console much more personal. Maybe with the ability to send messages now, they are building a platform that can run on the Switch as well.
Miis are a relic of that story, of that Wii success story, that it was like everyone had their own avatar, and here is the way we chose to make them look because it wasn't about how the character looked. It was more about the interaction and what you were doing and how it was one-to-one.
I think they'll keep going with Miis, though, don't you think? Like, I feel like the Switch is not going to be a restart in a way where everything that worked for Nintendo in the past is thrown out. I think the Miis will survive.
I think the Miis will survive, but I do think they're in a weirder place given that Wii U started with basically following up that act of your Mii is your story, your Mii is your character, your 3DS, same thing. And I don't think they were able to find many applications. I mean, granted, that's changing. I feel like this month, next month in Japan, for example, they're putting out a game called Miitopia. It's this wacky, like absolutely insane RPG where you cast your friends as the other Mii characters. And I'm curious to see if they will continue to do that stuff. But I feel like for the hardcore Nintendo fan, Miis were symbolic of this, and I'm reacting based on like the things I hear around the office sometimes, but I think folks looked at them as very sterile, personality-less characters that didn't have the kind of personality or traits that they saw in Nintendo characters. And so to me, I wonder if the hardcore audience even cares, like it just feels like it's such a casual play instead.
Yeah, but I mean, the Miis were deliberately simple, and like in that simplicity, we found so much creativity. I mean, what people have done with Miis is insane, right? Like once in a while you see a Mii and you look at it and you're like, oh, those are the eyebrows on the chin, right? Like it's pretty amazing.
It is.
But nothing stops them from taking that basis of the Mii and actually expanding on it, right? Like I'd say Splatoon, it would be awesome if you could get something more full-featured like the Splatoon characters, with that kind of customization. But I think Miis are not done. And I think Miitomo, I don't think they would stick this much work into the platform if there wasn't a use of it somewhere else.
Sure. No, I hear you. Yeah. So would you say here and now Switch will absolutely incorporate Miis in some way and continue that? I mean, that's the Nintendo sort of identity.
I think so, especially since let's face it, like Microsoft ripped them off, right? Microsoft introduced their version of the avatars through Rare, a very Nintendo company, and it was a straight up rip-off of having these avatars represent you on that platform. Sony never went down that route. Microsoft moved away from it. That means it's still uniquely Nintendo. When we think about these kind of funny cartoon character representations, you instantly think of Nintendo. And I don't think they're going to cut that cord.
Yeah, and maybe to counter my own point, there is a lot more personalities in Mii's through Miitomo and through Tomodachi Life to an extent than was ever a part of Nintendo's typical software packages. So, like their Wii Fits and their Wii Tennis and Wii Sports and et cetera, et cetera. Like most of those applications didn't have a ton of personality and eccentricity to them. There wasn't a lot of that. Whereas I feel like every time I'm curious to come back to the app more. I think some folks will look at this as too little, too late.
Yeah.
Personally, I want to see how well this will do after Mario Run. If Mario Run brings in an audience, then this wasn't for nothing.
There's a meaningful connection to and a meaningful reward. Yeah. I mean, remember we haven't seen the full kind of centralized Nintendo account system yet either. Like, I think there's just so many balls up in the air that may come together in the end.
Well, then that's actually this should be our last question then. So the one thing we do know about the relationship between Miitomo and Super Mario Run is that your Miitomo friends are your Mario Run competitors. They are the people you will be playing against, and you'll see their scores. Does Miitomo become that Nintendo Switch as well? Does it tie to that account? Because you're going to regret it. You have so many people on that list that you just let in from the beginning. Okay. But I wonder, will Miitomo be the way you communicate with your Nintendo Switch friends?
Yeah, I mean, more so than that is if you've played Forza Horizon or the Forza games on the Xbox, they use your friends as what they call drivatars, right? And there's some secret sauce about actually using some people's driving data, but mostly it's just about taking something you instantly recognize and assigning it to a car, and suddenly that car takes on personality. I'm behind Jose, and like it makes me feel something, right? And I think that approach was really, really smart for Forza. Whether the car drives like you or not doesn't matter.
Sure.
And I do think Nintendo recognizes that, and like Miitomo could form the foundation for something like that, a system that just makes things more personal. And ideally, yeah, it'll be tied to the actual player performances, but at its very basic note, it's like. It's like the stuff we've seen on 3DS where, through Street Pass, a character who would otherwise be generic becomes special because you're like, oh, I recognize that guy, or I remember that guy, or that's my friend.
Sure, sure. Okay. So then in other sort of a related topic with respect to Switch, I'm not sure if when John was here, we talked about this, but, we obviously talked about the touchscreen, right? Yeah. Whether or not it is, we feel that it is. We're pretty certain it is. But here's the big question. If Nintendo Switch indeed has a touchscreen, why didn't Nintendo talk about it? I mean, to set the basis for this question, touch gaming is basically the biggest moneymaker in video games today. And I know some folks don't like to acknowledge that, but it's true. The biggest market, the biggest selling device is a touch-based device. Nintendo has a history with touch-based devices. The simplicity of touch is one of the reasons Nintendo DS ended up doing so well and not having competition like smartphones. It's the easiest story to tell in this era that most people are attracted to who aren't hardcore gamers, and yet they chose not to show it in this presentation.
Well,
why?
The presentation did not focus on casual gaming at all, right? I mean, the presentation was very much like this machine can run all the games you can see on your Wii U and your Xbox One and PS4, right? With some changes, but like it's that full featured console experience, and I think the touchscreen story wouldn't have added anything to that story because you're not yet telling the story that it's a versatile device that can actually run some of your favorite Android games or anything like that. They're not telling that story. Maybe they will tell it in the future. But what talking about the touchscreen would have introduced in the trailer, in the reveal, would have been this is just like the Wii U. Right? Like,
do you think so?
Like you would have looked at it and said, how is this different from the Wii U? Like if they were using a stylus in it, I would have thought, oh, okay, yeah, it's closer to the gamepad. And then you'd think about like, oh, okay, maybe they will use this for mobile games. Maybe, I think the story shifts from this is a true console that you hook up to your TV and you take with you and look, you're playing these really powerful games on the go to, it is very similar to the gamepad or it's very similar to the 3DS, but I don't think they wanted to tell.
I don't think that the version of that interpretation changes just because you tell that story later, though. Like, I don't. I mean, I think that you give yourself room to control it
more
and talk about it. Yeah. But at the end of the day, that's still your story. And I don't know. Like, I guess some folks have been comparing Nintendo Switch to Wii U and saying, oh, well, it's Wii U 2.0. Yeah. But I think that one thing that video did do is that every game that they showed immediately communicated basically what the device could be used for.
Yeah.
So if touch is one of those devices.
But there's more to it, too. I don't think touch is it. I think there's more to this device. And they didn't want to tell all those stories right from the get-go. Mm-hmm. Maybe, honestly, maybe there wasn't any software that they wanted to show that was touch-focused, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you can think of creativity apps and stuff where then if they had shown it, people would have said, well, okay, you're competing with the iPad now, good luck, right? Like, I can understand why they would have left it out.
So, yeah.
And it also becomes a very positive story now where you go like, oh, I've seen what this thing can do. You know, it can run a version of Skyrim. It can run this beautiful Mario game, Mario Kart, Splatoon, all this stuff. Oh, look, it can do more, right?
Yeah.
Like, here's another thing. Now they're going to show the amiibo thing, which they hinted at and confirmed, but they haven't really shown. Now it can do, you know, some other weird stuff with that left button that we don't know what it does, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe that's focused on the sharing ability. And then they're going to say, look, you can pinch and zoom in, zoom out, and you can use a stylus too on this thing.
So I can see where you're coming from, right? Having more story to tell at the end of the day is a better thing because it's and it does this, and it does this, and it does this. However,
they need more of that.
I will say I think one of the other reasons I personally think they didn't choose to talk about this is because it is the one part of the story that needs a bit more explanation. The minute you put the Switch in the dock, how are you touching that game? And
no, you're right. No, you're absolutely right.
That is not a story that you can tell within 3 minutes in a video that isn't even narrated. You know, like they're not. I think that may have been the roadblock there. It's just that we don't have a way to tell this story visually.
That's really smart. I think you're onto something. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to show Mario Maker on this thing. The Mario Maker story is going to continue. That's a platform for creativity, right? Now, in a dedicated Mario Maker Switch trailer, they can show you creating and using the touchscreen, and then you go, oh, try this level, and you put it on the thing, and boom, your friend is going to play it on the big screen. Like, you can tell that story visually. Now, you can use Mario Maker with a D-pad and a controller too. You can create pretty good things, but you know, it's not as fun as drawing on it. And they're going to show you that you can in fact do both with those things.
See, but that's the thing too. I think that the scenario you just described to some extent could have been something they could have shown. Could have been, hey, someone creating a level, boop.
You don't think it would have been distracting, don't you think?
I think it would have been. I think that's why they ultimately chose to walk away. I think you're right on that point.
Yeah.
But I do think that had to be the reason because it's just that when I think about how big touch gaming is, how big that audience is, how much money that audience has brought in, I think it would be silly of Nintendo to make a handheld-like device and not include that function.
Oh, absolutely. It's gonna have a touchscreen.
Yeah.
100% it's gonna have a touchscreen. But but I think there are other features that, you know, quite frankly, they purposely didn't talk about much. You know, like they could have easily like spun the system around and showed you where the stylus is, or showed you a little bit more about the shoulder buttons or what's underneath the Joy-Cons, and they purposely didn't do that. They're like, hey, our story is not about all the stuff this thing does. Our story is, here's what the core concept is: a powerful console that you dock and you take with you, and it's pretty cool. Like, it'll feel good to dock it, right? Like, docking things rarely feels good. If you have an older laptop or you've used a PC laptop, the docks are like ka-chunk, like it's this awful like physical thing. Sometimes it doesn't make the connection. With Macs, there's no great solution. There's some vertical docks, but nothing feels good. I think they spend a lot of time on making that feel good.
Yeah, even your phone, when you're plugging it into a dock like your iPhone or whatnot, like you have to kind of like wiggle it around. And
the iPhone stand is a ridiculously poorly designed product. Have you seen the stand?
Wait,
when you go to the Apple store, you can see them. They use them for the display that props up your phone at an angle, and it like literally rests on that little port.
Oh yeah.
Like, by the way, I have like two at home because lots of kids and wives, right?
Money.
It won't even work with my wife's, right? Like it's so touchy and so bad. But like that's my point. I think they spend a lot of time making that docking procedure not just look cool. Like I think when you watch the trailer, it's like it's neat how they go like the chink with the controllers and everything. It looks cool, right? I think they will show a little bit more around that, and you know, maybe there's a reason why the sliver of the console sticks out at the top, right? There's been theories that you need that for, you know, for pointer controls or whatever. We don't know. It may just be that you can see that it's off, or you know, it vents. Well, there's definitely more story to tell there in January. Bar. Yeah, in January you're going to get those answers one way or another, so make sure you stick around for that. Yeah.
Other things.
Tantalizing.
In the world of tantalizing things, then how about NES Classic? Are you buying one, or has that ship sailed for you?
You're just teasing me. So my my Famicom is on the way from Japan.
So you bought a Famicom Mini
from Amazon Japan, yeah.
How about the
if
US?
you ever want to do that, it's pretty easy without reading Japanese. Just have Amazon US and Japan open at the same time. All the links and
switch the
buttons
language
are
at the
in
bottom.
the same. But isn't it bull translation? It's
it's not great translation.
Anyway, I like my dual screen approach.
Both full translation.
All the buttons are in the same spots. And honestly, if you shop on Amazon a lot, you probably can just do it blindly anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Also
I ordered
true.
that thing. I mean, the NES, it's going to be complicated again. It's like you have to set an alarm clock in order to buy it.
Let me tell you what time.
So I went to where did I go? Toys R Us to get a gift for a kid's birthday party, and they had every amiibo ever.
Nice.
It was every amiibo you ever wanted was there, and that's of course what's going to happen with the NES Classic. If you can wait, it'll be a no-stress shopping experience. But until then, how do we get this thing?
Good luck.
Tell us.
I will tell you. So Amazon sent out an email yesterday saying that the NES Classic will go for sale on the site at 2 p.m. on Friday. That is launch day, November 11th. Purchases of the console are limited to one per customer. Just one. And the company said that one-click ordering will be disabled for the NES Classic Edition. So you can't just sneak it in the cart and run. You have to go through a few steps. And they made it very clear that there are limited quantities through that retailer. Now, your other avenue, if you live in New York, Nintendo posted on social media that if you are one of the first 250 people in attendance at the Nintendo World New York store, or Nintendo World New York, I think that's the name. Sorry, I hope I didn't get that wrong. They are having a retro 80s bash full of neon pink and blue and purple.
Nice.
Yeah, do it.
Some
and
Jan Hammer
you will-
music.
Exactly, and you will be among the first to purchase the system in the U.S. that way if you go to that shindig. I believe that's November 10th, so it's the day we're recording this. So if you're listening and you missed it,
Whoops.
I am so sorry, but hopefully you know someone who's going.
But if you went, what the hell, man? You should be working. What's going on?
It's 80s bash, man. They got to go with the shoulder pads and the big hair.
That's
got to do all of it.
That's the challenge. It goes on sale when people are at work. It's not going to be a smooth experience for those who really want it. But if you're the kind of dedicated Nintendo fan who's going to stand in line or get there early to a store, I think you have a good chance at scoring one, right?
Yep. No, totally. I'm going to try and get one tomorrow. I did take the Office one to a friend's house who has an 8-year-old who has loose relationship to Nintendo. So first of all, he loves the Switch. He wants one, and his birthday is in February, but the console comes out in March. So he's already wheeling and dealing to find
get the Kenner action figure coupon for his birthday.
I guess.
The
I
empty
don't know.
box with a picture of it.
But a funny note, though, I hadn't played the NES Classic, and I had that moment where you're teaching someone, oh, this is the first secret in Super Mario Bros. He's like, there are secrets? And I go down the first warp pipe and go to the end, and he's like, oh, it's earth-shattering, which is always fun to, if you're a parent who has raised a child, props. That's a moment. That's the reason I think gamers definitely want to have kids and pass that stuff on.
And then they realize how hard it is, and that one hit kills bound in any of these.
So
games.
when he did it, he got really excited, and then you know what he did, right? Right after he finished the level and he went through the warp pipe and he got it done, he threw his arms up in great yes,
yay!
And he was still holding the controller.
Oh no!
Guess what happened to the system?
Catapult classic.
Yes, the 2.5-inch cores. I'm about to go cruise ship again on this table.
Wow!
Oh my God! It is so difficult. That to me was the use case I didn't have in the review, and I kind of wish I had. But regardless, we gave it a 7.5. That being one of the caveats, right? The other, obviously, for folks to know, these are 30 preloaded games. That's not an insinuation that they have to be able to expand or do more. It's just that 30 is what you're getting, and that's it. Lucky story for you, these are 30 great games, or 29, depending on your attitude towards Ice Climbers. That's what he did, and that's why I was there horrified.
One of you guys tweeted at me and said that you're disappointed that it is the best and the best known games that are included because you're so familiar with it. But I think that's a reminder that most people probably haven't played those games much. The nostalgia factor is there for people who haven't played those games as well for a while. So maybe we'll get to alternate editions that go a little deeper into the catalog, but I mean, it's hard to complain about that lineup of games. There's so many good games. And by the way, on the note of the controller cord, there've been more solutions coming out now, right?
Oh, talk about those.
There's one third-party manufacturer is making an extension cord that works, that doesn't have the plastic clip on it. Reminder, if you buy one of the extension cords that has the plastic clip from the Wii age, use a small screwdriver, take it off so that two can fit into the port. It's a serviceable solution.
Yeah, no.
And then there was a NES controller adapter, too.
So, yeah, folks are putting different things out. For example, Hyperkin put out a press release that they're making, a controller adapter for the original Nintendo Entertainment System controller, which if you have one of those, that's 7.5 feet of cable, just for comparison, roughly. That's not an approximation. But you're able to basically put something off over the pin adapter and convert it to a Wii accessory port, and then just plug that right in, and you should be fine. That's cool. Someone also put out a wireless version where you put in a little NES accessory.
It's a third-party wireless
It's a third-party one.
controller,
The controller itself is hideous. It's ugly. It is like one of those things. Here's the thing that bugged me the most the other day. Maybe it shouldn't have, but I'm just going to throw this out there. I plugged in a Wii Classic controller, the revised one. You know how first they had one that it sort of looked like a Super Nintendo controller, and then they did it over?
The lozenge.
Yeah, the lozenge-looking thing. Yeah, exactly. The one that had like two sets of triggers right next to each other, which I've never liked. I still don't like that on the new Nintendo 3DS. Not a fan.
Yeah.
I plugged in the revised version that they shipped with Monster Hunter Tri on Wii. Guess what happens when you hit the home button on that controller?
You go to the menu.
Yes, it could have been that way. It could have been.
It's so weird.
It is
Why
a
didn't they
strange
just
choice.
Put that on there.
Good friend of this show, Jeremy Parrish, thinks that it is because they used the original molds for the NES controller that they decided not to change the front.
What happened to the original molds for the cords? No, I hear you, but
he thinks that they were going for authenticity, and therefore that's what it was. And I agree with him. I think he's right for the most part. But the part of my brain that is just like, if this had been there and this had been fixed, this to me would have made more sense. Versus, again, like if you have kids, this is the story that's going to happen to you. I saw it firsthand.
Yeah,
that thing's going to go flying. It is paperweight, like it is so light and so easy to toss around.
I'll definitely get an extension cord. Like I don't really have a TV in the house where we can sit that close. Quite frankly, like maybe my son's room, one of them. Yeah, no, he's got an HDMI port on the front, so we could do it there. But it's just. There are not many places where we could do this.
All right.
Because of my fancy big setups.
GM money.
I'm getting a 4K TV next week.
Oh my God!
Finally.
How?
I don't have a 4K TV yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
You should see the glint in his eye when he said that.
My wife put the stamp of approval on it.
All right.
Yeah.
And now it's official.
Yeah.
When's it coming in?
Well, I don't know yet. I have to order it on Friday.
Okay. Fair enough.
Saturday. Sorry.
All right.
Yeah.
In our last story, before we take a quick break, Nintendo finally came out and announced that Wii U production is ending. Now, this story originated in Japan.
Yep.
This is a week after rumors were already saying they were going to end production. And last week, you know what they said to those rumors? That's not happening. We're not doing that. Turns out this week there's a different story. And we just got comment from Nintendo of America that advisory goes for Japan and the US. They are shutting down production on Wii U. The final tally, I think, on console sold is 14 million. We have to start planning our Wii eulogy, is what Marty Sleva called it. Wow. I think that's makes a lot of sense. We should have that.
That's beautiful.
Before the end of the year.
Yeah,
you think?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah,
it's. I mean, it was an interesting system with some really good games on it, and just hampered by its appeal to broader masses
and limitations,
like short lifespan and no support, right?
Yeah.
There's some cool stuff people did on Wii U.
Yep.
And some really cool games. I think they'll be fondly remembered. I think many of them are going to make a return on the Switch.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, we'll save that for the Nintendo voice chat Wii eulogy coming into the next few weeks.
Beautiful.
So let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about a happy topic, I promise. Something about a recent forum post that actually raised my eyebrow. We'll be right back.
Listen.
And welcome back. Jose Otero here with Per Schneider. And Per, so a good friend of the show, Vanilla Light on NeoGAF, posted a thread that I thought was interesting. It was about your favorite top 5 handheld games that appeared on a Nintendo system. Now, there are some rules to this game, so let me school you. Number 1, you can choose any game on any Nintendo portable system, from the Game & Watch all the way to the 3DS and anything in between. It can be a first-party or third-party game, does not matter, as long as it is a game that can be played on there. The only exclusions are virtual console games, which so you can't cheat and put like, oh, there's your
Link to the Past.
Your Link to the Past is immediately the one everyone goes for. Oh, he's changing his answers. But under these rules, that means remakes count. So like Ocarina of Time 3D and Majora's Mask 3D. From what I can tell,
it was so easy
are allowed.
without that.
Yeah, it was way easier without that. Actually, I'm not going to put them on because
I'm going to leave out remakes.
Yeah, I'm leaving out remakes too.
And yeah. But Smash Brothers, for example, is fair game because it launched on 2 platforms.
Yeah, and it is a different version of the platform. Real quick, I just want to read his because I reached out to him and asked him for it. So he said Mega Man 5 Game Boy.
Wow.
Dawn of Sorrow, DS, great choice. The World Ends With You, DS, also a great choice.
Yeah.
A Link Between Worlds, 3DS, horrible choice.
Yeah.
I'm kidding, great choice. And last one is Advance Wars for Game Boy Advance. He felt that Mega Man 5 on Game Boy is a sleeper. All other Game Boy games were weird NES mashups. 5 was the first time they tried to do an all-original title on the Game Boy. And it got their attention. All right, so do you want to go first?
Ooh.
Oh, by the way,
should we just do one? Should we both do
trade?
number 5 and then
okay.
work our way,
well,
way
see,
up?
I kept going. I have a list of like 14 just in case you took any of mine because I was willing to switch.
No.
So why don't you go first?
Let's just go 5 and up. Don't switch, and then we can always talk about the honorable mentions.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Number 5.
All right. Hold on. So,
number 5.
Okay. Number 5 for me is you're not gonna believe this is 3D Picross.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So you really like that game.
So I like most of the Picross games. I'm not a big fan of Pokemon. I thought the free Zelda one was actually fun, but like 3D Picross was just one of those games that really I was obsessed with. I bought the Japanese import and I spent so long on it. And there's so much in it. And I just think it's such a it's fairly complex for being a puzzle, kind of like a thinking man's game. But once you play the original Picross and then you upgrade to that, something happens. Like just the kind of spatial thinking, the way you navigate it, the way they did the controls. You know, they simplified it obviously later, where you can explode a bunch of zeros like all at once. Like it's just such a smartly designed game that all it does it uses numbers like. You know, Sudoku that created this kind of like number game craze. It's like it's like that, but for the digital age, and I just think it's fantastic.
No, I agree with you. I want to ask which one. Are we talking the Nintendo DS version or the Nintendo 3DS version? Are you talking about round 2?
I'm talking about the original one. The original one.
3D.
There's just like,
for Nintendo 3DS.
There's certain games
DS.
on my list where I'm like, you know what, the sequels are really good, but like you can't get that feeling again from like playing a game like that for the first time.
Yep.
And a bunch of games I left off that it's killing me that I couldn't put them in my top 5. But
I know that feeling.
But I always felt like and I'll give you an example. Tetris is not on my list.
What?
But it is like such a classic. It's just that I feel like I've played it across so many different platforms.
They all bleed together.
And Game Boy was so awesome because you could play it anywhere. But I didn't put that one. I didn't put that one on my list. Shameful.
No, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I was really torn on number 5, and I'm still looking at 5 and 6 and going, should I make number 6 number 5? Because 6 is so good.
Yeah.
And it's a third-party game. And all right, I'm gonna pull the trigger on 6. Make 6 my number 5.
Wow.
And if you name any of these, I will throw that back in.
Yeah.
Fine, whatever. I'm just gonna go with my 5 then. WarioWare Twisted.
Okay.
And for good reason. So the WarioWare concept obviously has its own merit, right? Of being these fun, crazy micro games that you are figuring out as you go. You're given the broadest instruction. You have to do it. By the way, what happened to that series? I feel like I haven't seen one of those in forever. Done in a really smart way, the way that game was done. But Twisted got the edge for me simply because of the motion pack.
Yeah.
And you know, you always bring up the cheese grater. I always bring up like the sort of the wacky, like you're this big monster stomping through town. Or there are plenty of examples of just really, really smart thinking on how to make games work through a motion device on a Game Boy.
Yeah.
And something that's an add-on that was done through the cartridge itself. I just feel like it's such an achievement. It took what was already a great concept and made it better and made it zanier than the original.
It was a really interesting experiment in like making the device you held feel like something else, they just the feeling of turning it while it goes clacka, clacka, clacka. They did such a great job with that. I'd almost forgotten about that game. I love the WarioWare games. I feel like they've been, they've been replaced by some of the other kind of micro game collections that Nintendo has done. That one in the entire series is the one that has this kind of unique hook. Yeah. And like you can't really point at many other games that are like that. You know, it's such a memorable, cool game.
Yeah. The closest feeling to it was the Wii version, but I feel like the reason that one didn't hold up for me, and granted this is a handheld list, so it would never be here, was that they had to explain how you had to hold the controller before you did the minigame. There was such versatility with the Wii remote that you can hold it in so many different ways. They decided to come up with poses you had to be in order to get this to work. Yeah. And I think that's where it got too uninteresting to me. Like I was just like, you're kind of telling me part of the puzzle at this point. I don't know.
I get it.
Put it on your hips and shake it.
Good game. Yeah, all right, my number 4 then. So this one was a tough one because, as you know, one of my favorite series of all time are the Zelda games, right? Like I love Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Link to the Past. Now I feel like it would be cheating to include any of those on the list, so I'm not going to do that, but I love those 3 games. And so that it was between A Link Between Worlds and Link's Awakening. And ultimately A Link Between Worlds won out for me.
What? Okay.
Because like Link to the Past has a special place in my heart. And this game played to that nostalgia factor where you're revisiting the world, but then the story changes. And like it had this kind of cool, like this sense of like what my favorite like old school Star Trek Next Generation episodes did, like revisit a kind of previous storyline or original Star Trek series. And later Voyager and DS9 too. I'm so sorry. But like you take something and then you remix it and you update it. Yeah. Some superhero movies do that, obviously, like Abrams did it with Star Trek. But I love that kind of sense of taking something that's familiar and then messing with it.
No, yeah, and also coming up with a way that it's still friendly for first-timers. I think that was the thing that impressed me the most. Yep. When people tell me, what is the first Zelda game I should play? I've never played one. I say, do you have a 3DS? They say, yes. Yeah. I say, A Link Between Worlds, bar none.
And I say this, even though the art style itself for that game, like I did not like the character, the way the characters looked and all that. I think that's where it's weak, but the gameplay is really strong. Just the feel is so good. I loved it also because we came back after years of playing stylus-based handheld Zelda games, like just to kind of go back to that classic feel of it, really made that game special for me too. And then it just has these moments where it's just like moments of courage where, the solution is not dodging the enemy ad infinitum. It's just like a simple kind of thing that you have to think about, and like that's so good.
Yeah, and turning into the painting on the wall, I think is still one of the most elegant and smart puzzle solving ideas they've come up with, because whenever you're trapped, you go, wait a minute, and then you look around the room and you realize there's a slit right there.
Yeah. And then ultimately, I don't think that the kind of item rental, acquisition system really fulfilled on its promise of making the game more like feel like you have more of a choice. Like I actually do like the idea of having an item that's tied to a dungeon where you're like, okay, I get it. I now have the hook shot, so I can do these things. I like that progression. I don't mind them keeping it, but it was refreshing to break out of that cycle too.
Yeah, my one disappointment was, I don't think the item shop lived up to what they hoped. It did open it up so that you could travel in any direction and not kind of be held back by what was in your inventory. Like you'd basically plan ahead, if anything, but it also was so easy to get money in that game.
It was too easy. That's the thing.
That was the core issue. Like money, Dan Stapleton likes to say this in the office a lot when we were talking about that game, but money grows on trees in that game from every angle, and it seems to replenish a little too quickly. And that's not even counting when you do those little mini dungeons that you're able to get, like, here's 200 rupees off of the silver one.
But that's a small complaint for me.
Yeah, same.
In a game that's just great, and like I think that ease of getting money for younger players is very much welcome, and you know, one thing that makes that game much more accessible than like Majora's Mask, for example, where I think younger players are like, what is going on? Like,
there's a lot going on. Yes, in the office, CJ, his kid finished Ocarina of Time 3D by himself. Needed to look up like one thing. He did it alone. I think he's like 9.
Probably the lens of truth.
Yeah, he's gonna start playing Majora's Mask, and CJ brought him to the office, and I warned him. I was like, "This one's a lot harder." I was like, "Are you sure?" And I mentioned some of the things, like how there's this town, and sometimes you have to go talk to a specific person at a specific time of day. And he's like, "Well, how does time pass?" He's like, "Does it pass like our world?" I'm like, "No, it passes really fast, but you can slow it down." He's like, "Oh my god, I don't know what I'm gonna do." I just thought that was interesting.
My oldest son gave up on that game. I think Bongo Bongo killed him a couple of times too many. I'm like, I don't even remember that battle being that difficult.
That
but
hard,
like he apparently had an issue with that, and then of course later lost his save.
And bosses can make you rage.
I'm gonna make him play it again.
Okay.
Yeah. What's your number?
Number 4 for me is Animal Crossing New Leaf.
Good
It
one.
is the game that of all the Animal Crossing games, I think had the most unique hook, and it did. You know, the whole mayor angle I think was really smart. It was really a smart way to not only invest you in developing your town, but in having the ability to control the town and be like, hey, there's an ordinance in place that everyone has to clean up. I'm not the only person who weeds here. Or, hey, there's an ordinance in place that shops have to stay open later because I have a real life. Like, I'm able to go to shops later in the day.
You just like bossing people around.
I like the idea that you have more control over that world. I do think that its interface for putting down objects in the real world, in the overworld, is very. It needs an update. It is in desperate need of an update. Trying to position Isabelle in the exact spot so that she then thinks, "Is this where you want the table?" Come on, like that's a 2013 limitation. We're in 2016, so I'm hoping the future that they get that together. But in terms of everything else, I think that. It's just one of those games that every day feels like a surprise, right? And every day you'll find something and be like, oh, that's cool. The only other place I wish that Animal Crossing would grow a little more is that's me again, is excuse me, is the townspeople interactions. I just feel like the dialogue is cute, but I don't find many instances outside of, hey, so-and-so lost this thing, can you take it to her? Or, hey, I'm having a party on Saturday, can you remember to come? Like, it just seems very, very simple. I wish there was something a little deeper.
It's a general issue with the Animal Crossing games. Like, you do wish that there was more to distinguish the characters from each other with, like, the way that they feel about you. Like, I think there's more work to be done on that to make the interactions more unique.
Yep.
Where you remember, oh, this one character is all about this, and it does feel very interchangeable.
Yeah, but regardless of all that, as a portable series and as one of the last real Animal Crossing games in that series, I have to say, like, it is bar none the best they've done, I feel, and I can't wait to see where it goes next. But I'm playing it now again because of this update, and just being reminded constantly of why I like that series and why I like that game.
I'm too. I'm playing it. You know, my daughter was full of glee over the update and started playing again and comes over to my town peddling her perfect fruit and all that. But no, it's just such a good series. And like, you know, I still remember the day I first saw this game running on N64 at a Nintendo event in Japan. And I was like, this looks so different. Like the art style, it just looks beautiful too. Like it's so simple. Almost like a precursor to the Mii's, you know, like to that whole kind of simple Nintendo approach. And I've never really fallen out of love with that series. I'm a little, you know, like as if you heard the last episode, I'm like, I feel like I've done everything that I want to do in the game. But I'm very much looking forward to the next one, and I absolutely think it deserves a place on the list. It's a good one. Good choice.
All right, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is Pokemon Blue and Red / Yellow.
Okay.
Out of the 3, definitely Yellow. I really like Pikachu as a character.
Okay.
And I love the kind of early use of color that we got with that version. No, but Blue and Red are just so special to me. Like, that really was the first game where I felt this investment in kind of collecting and like being complete and trading with people. And there've been like Final Fantasy games before where you want your character to learn all the jobs, and like I totally fell for that. I said before, I'm a story gamer, but I do make exceptions with certain games, like Assassin's Creed 4. I got everything in that game,
Got it.
and that was the case certainly with Pokemon Blue and Red in the beginning, and I played a little bit of Green as well, but it's just such a well-designed game, and like it's so clear, the systems are so clear, like the concept of the tall grass, right? Like they took all these things from past RPGs and then turned it into this really kind of delightful little adventure, because it's not this world-ending quest and this boss you beat, and when he dies he sprouts another wing, and like it's very simple. It's very much like it's this kind of like just kids.
No, yeah, and there had been plenty of RPGs before, but how many had up to 151 different playable party members for you to use? And I think that's part of the appeal. That the collecting aspect is definitely what really holds it all together. But when you look at it in the context of the genre, there weren't many games like that, and there still aren't many games like that. Now, it doesn't affect the ending. You don't get different endings because you miss certain Pokemon.
Yeah.
You get rare chances to catch some of them, and you have to take advantage of that opportunity. But even the aspect of, again, battling and collecting, which you mentioned, like the trading aspect and collecting, or battling. I think battling is also a cool thing, because how many RPGs have you played where it's like, my party's better than yours, and I can prove it? Like that's kind of dope.
It's just such a brilliant concept when you go back, the nuance that they built into that game. There've been so many RPGs, especially in Japan, that were clever, that had some sort of element where you can catch something, like you can catch an enemy, make him part of the party, but never like that. I mean, you will get a completely different Pokemon depending on when you evolve it. Like the stats are varied, and like you really get the sense of like wanting to find that diamond in the rough, and then training it, and then trading it back and forth, obviously, to get like the bonuses that come with that. It's just, I mean, the Pokemon games, it's amazing because it feels like they haven't really changed much over the years. They actually have added a lot more elements to it, certainly, sophistication and like graphics and how you connect with people. But like that core gameplay is what defines that series, and it hasn't changed, and it really hasn't needed to, because it's so unique and awesome.
Yeah, and it has created an interesting culture of you gotta catch them. You gotta catch everyone that you can, and that's why that slogan, I guess, worked so well for it.
It's literally a franchise that you can summarize in that one sentence.
Yeah, gotta catch them all.
Yeah.
All right. Number 3 for me, changed. It was A Link Between Worlds, but you brought it up. And also reminded me again how much I've been sort of torn on that game's look. I think Triforce Heroes did a better job in terms of how it looked. It didn't go for the same look. I think it looked better, but fortunately it was all around a multiplayer game that folks either enjoyed or didn't. But that's not the discussion. I moved up Elite Beat Agents. So this is the first third-party game on this list, I think.
It's one of the ones where I feel sad that I don't have it on my list.
So if you know what Elite Beat Agents is, if not, you know what Owendan and Owendan 2 is. But basically, it is a game based around, in the agent's case, an elite group of agents who come out to cheer you up when you are trapped in a terrible, terrible dilemma. Those dilemmas of this game include... Actually, I don't remember. Like movies getting filmed and things going wrong, to infiltration, to steal company secrets and trying not to get caught. Like they had all these wacky interstitials, and whenever you ran into trouble, and you needed some cheering up, the agents would come out. And the core idea of that series was basically you're tapping along to popular music. And that is in and of itself an interesting, like it was licensed tracks that they went for even. So in the US, they dressed it up as an FBI agent, like Motif, secret agent Motif. In Japan, it was Japanese male cheerleaders, which are called Owendan, which are known for just shouting, coming up with all the cheers at like baseball games and Japanese sporting events. In fact, they take it so seriously. When the team is losing, they believe it is their fault because they are not cheering hard enough. That's how weird Owendan culture can get there. But this game is incredible. And if you make it to, when you get through normal, it's one trip. When you get through very hard, it is completely something else. It is playing Jumping Jack Flash, which is the last song in the game. And if you miss a note, it just all falls apart. You just feel like I'm done. But you're tapping in rhythm, you're sliding sort of these graphics along these bars to keep in time with the music.
And you have indicators like shrinking circles.
Yeah,
that
shrinking
show you when to
circles.
hit it.
It's very QTE based if you want to, look at it reductively.
Yep.
But I think there's a lot more to it than that, because this isn't one QTE. This is like 8 going off at once in one song, and you're like tap 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 tap, and you're like, what?
But the reason why it works, and there are obviously so many rhythm games, is that it feels good.
Yeah.
Right? And like when this is the era where we all played Guitar Hero and then later Rock Band, and where it felt good because it felt like holding a guitar. But with this game, they managed to pull that kind of that sense off on a touchscreen. Like it just felt good doing all these little things, and then the visuals were it's just funny and
it's
crazy,
so wacky.
and it's just entertaining.
Yeah. You see these guys in suits just swinging their arms from side to side and singing along, and there's this whole music video happening.
Great franchise,
Yeah, no, really good stuff. Sadly, Owen 2 didn't get localized because Elite Beat Agents tanked. To my knowledge, it just did not do well, which is a shame though, because on Nintendo DS there were so many games that were left field, like no one had ever thought brain training in minutes a day was going to be a huge thing. Nobody thought that Nintendogs would be this incredible experiment that so many people want to try.
Yeah.
And there were so many of those stories, and it's sad to me that one of the footnotes is that Elite Beat Agents didn't end up being one of those games globally. It did end up being one of those games in Japan.
Yeah.
Because in Japan, 1 and 2 sold fairly, if not very well.
Yeah, that's why I was hoping that they'd just do a downloadable version or something, like a simple release where you don't really have that much risk, but it wasn't to be. Maybe we'll get it. Maybe we'll get it on a touchscreen-enabled future device.
Switch.
Oh, does that have a touchscreen?
I don't know.
All right.
All right.
It would be really nice to get that.
Number 2.
Number 2. Okay.
I might change mine, but I'm gonna let you go.
All right. It has to be Advance Wars. I
What?
love
I should have
Advance
known.
Wars. Oh man, I love that series. I'm so sad it's not around. If you know how much I love Advance Wars, you can already guess what my number 1 is. But I really am fond of the original kind of GBA title. I played every game in the series. I like them all. Battalion Wars doesn't count. Very different game. But I'd say second would be Dual Strike in that series, which did something really unique with the 2-screen setup on the DS. But I just love the original GBA game. I wish those characters were coming back, like that we'd see Andy or some of the characters in a future Smash Brothers game. This is a franchise worth continuing. I don't know. Maybe the whole military angle, even though it's kind of cutesy looking, was too much for Nintendo in the end, and they just focused on the other strategy strategy turn-based series. But
You mean the one you're not naming? That
the
is
one I'm
probably
not
number
naming,
1.
I don't know where it would rank. I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, just checking, because I can see your paper for me.
Love that game series. Honestly, if you're one of those people who has never played it, if you can just play Dual Strike, that one is easy to find, I think, on the DS or the original GBA games.
Yeah, because those are on Wii U if you have one of those.
But it really is special on a handheld. I feel like it's not a sit at home kind of game. It's really like you can play these missions while you're in transit somewhere. And,
Sure. No, I mean the general strategy alone of those games has always blown me away, because unlike that other series made by the same company, this one, I like how I'm not saying it. This one, it was a requirement to take over and control territory. And that's something that not every mission in that other game we're going to talk about later, that was part of it. And I feel like that was a very real part of success. Not just that, but just managing your resources and being smart about deployment, which is the story of every strategy game for sure.
It just has these moments because, like many strategy games, certain units are strong against others but weak against others. And like when you get that moment where you make a mistake and you're like, oh no, I put that unit too close to this guy, and you see the cutscene and you're going to be taken out. It has this tension that you wouldn't expect from a turn-based game, that you would expect from an action game. And then when they miss and you make it, it's just such a great moment. Also really love the capture mechanic, how you go like boom, 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 you take over a city with your guys. I can't say enough great things about that franchise. It's style-wise, character-wise, map-wise, strategy-wise, and music-wise, it's just a really good franchise. Needs to come back. Goes way back to the old Nintendo days. The Wars series, Famicom Wars and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
please bring it back.
Number 2 for me, I'm torn on because I don't know whether to go with the GBA version or the 3DS version of this game. I'm more inclined to go with the GBA one because it's the one that I cared about the most. Like I feel like the 3DS one came close, but there were some things that didn't quite hold me as strongly.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Rhythm Heaven, which is also made by the WarioWare team, and it is a music. I like music games.
You're
clearly.
you're big rhythm guy. Huh?
I'm big on rhythm games, and Rhythm Heaven to me is one of these really smart ideas that happened on Game Boy Advance that Japan got and no one else did until years later, until we finally got it on the DS. And that version's great.
Yeah.
But the original, there is a charm and an originality to it all. The first time you shoot at this ghost that is kind of like playing peekaboo as he comes out like a cuckoo as he's getting closer and closer to the gap in the fence. And when he goes to jump across, you have to fire a bow at his face and knock him through the door. Why are you doing that? Who cares? And that's kind of what I love about the series as a whole. It's this wacky, just out of this world humor. Like nothing has to make sense.
Well, it's WarioWare, right? Like you get, it's not quite as crude as WarioWare, but it's this continuation of like, what did I just see?
Yeah,
you get this.
There's another mini game where you're a mouse trying to evade a cat who keeps popping up at the table to look where the mice are, and you're running across a dinner table. You're stopping at the cups and at the plates and at any setup that you can as a group. I remember that. And you're the middle guy, so if you stop too early, the guy in back gets left out and starts freaking out. If you don't stop, you run into the guy in front of you, and he reacts. And that's the charm of the series as a whole. And I've talked about this plenty of times on the show, but it is that it's not just about you, but the people around you, the way they react to you. I admire that a lot. I just think that's the kind of judgment that we all cringe at in real life, but somehow they've turned it into this comical thing. Yeah,
it's a skill that really goes back to the early kind of Disney days, or you can see it in some of the Warner cartoons too. This just like where they can do so much with very small expressions, right? Like the way characters react. It's really masterfully done in these games.
Totally.
I laugh at many of just the way the characters look and the reproachful looks or the panic you can see in their faces. It's done with such like really simple strokes, but so masterfully. It's really, it's all hand animated, simple stuff.
Now, we talked to one of the creators of that series once, and he talked about how they signed up for dance classes. That was like a mandate from the producer on that game, who was an outside producer from Nintendo, who was a recording artist. He's like one of the most popular recording artists in Japan. And he says, in order for you guys to understand shared rhythm, you should really take dancing classes. And so they all ended up in Tokyo in a dancing class. And he said that it really stood out to him whenever they would do like an accent move. The feeling of accomplishment when they got it right was fantastic. And then the feeling of getting it wrong was just miserable. Well, not miserable, but it was definitely like, oh, God, like that was awful.
Everybody's watching me.
Yeah, so I think that they do an excellent job of distilling that into a game that is ultimately made for short bursts of play.
That's beautiful.
And then in a smart move in the first game, they do this thing where they basically add all the songs into one remix. So they build something else out of it, and that just shows this versatility to the music and to the designs of these puzzles, and I think that's really smart.
Yeah. No, it's a really good game. I thought about that one too. Elite Beat Agents I thought about too, but ultimately, I gravitate towards the kind of the strategy and the kind of like RPG adventure games, even on the go. And so, while I looked at a whole bunch of other games that could have made my list, ultimately Fire Emblem Awakening took my top spot.
What?
I know
I had no idea. None whatsoever.
Yeah, I love that game. Okay. I don't know if you know this. And Fates is obviously a really, really fantastic game too. Fates is a little bit more fussy in the way it's set up with the kind of the storyline triple split. I feel like Awakening doesn't have this kind of daunting approach, and I just love how Awakening did this whole kind of story with the kids first, right? Like this kind of teaming up with your offspring through this kind of time travel element in the game. Man, that game is so good. And then the Fire Emblem series in general has really good music. The music in that game was fantastic. Really good animated cutscenes, like that kind of cel-shaded anime style in Fire Emblem is I love the way that series looks. Yes, the characters didn't have feet, but that was that's a small complaint.
A small inconvenience.
No, it was a wonderful game in a long running awesome series with Sacred Stones. You can obviously play on a handheld too, and so many good games in that franchise, but Awakening is the one for me.
No, and you feel genuine terror when you make a decision, just like you said with the
loss, man, in that game. Loss is serious in that game.
Yeah.
Like you are. I mean, most people, I'm sure, lost one character, and like you do feel guilty, And like sometimes it's like after battling for 45 minutes, a character that you're trying to build up gets killed, and you're like, at this point, you're like, oh.
I mean, what about, did you build up Donald? Donald, the kid with the pot on his head?
So he's the one who got killed. On my first playthrough, he got killed, and I say, screw it.
Really?
Yeah.
He's like the secret best character in that game.
Yeah, and then afterwards, I'm like, now I have to play it again. No, but I love that that moment of choice, and you don't have that in a lot of games. And rightfully so. Games are not that brutal anymore, right? You don't get this like ghouls and ghosts thing where you're trying to beat this part, and then when you lose at the very end, you go back to the beginning. Like a lot of games don't do that anymore because we don't like being frustrated anymore. But I feel like in Fire Emblem, it works because it's part of the storyline and the responsibility that you have of your army. And by the way, you can make the decision to say, you know what, I'm going to leave that character behind. Or, you basically make the kind of general's decision of saying, that's a casualty of war. Like, that's what it takes to win this battle for me now.
Yeah. No, and it does end up putting you in a really difficult spot. I really enjoy also the idea that soldiers who fight together become closer. They become closer friends. They become lovers.
Support system, really good.
There's this angle of, the joke in Metal Gear is, can war bloom on a battlefield? Fire Emblem's answer is resoundingly yes, and you can have kids.
All the stuff you don't even see.
But I had a conversation once with Brendan on our Wikis team because he said that in some of the earlier Fire Emblem games, he appreciated that some of the pairings and specifically support conversations, there weren't as many. Like they were focused on very specific pairs, and so you just kind of tried to learn what those are. Yeah. And I was arguing that I liked where Awakening took it because I do like the idea that anyone can be a couple in that game and work out to work more efficiently and better and cover each other. Like I like having the plethora of options versus there are only these few. His argument though is that the ones that he feels that not all of them are as substantial. And I can see that. Some support conversations end in some of the weirdest like tomfoolery you've seen in video games, where, one that comes to mind is like, so-and-so put up posters of me naked to promote me around the camp. And it's like, why? What are you guys doing?
Japan.
Yeah, Japan. But I do like that aspect of it. I think that is another piece of why that series works so well. Like that's not a thing in for example, the other game that you mentioned, Advance Wars, that, they go in a different direction with their strategy. I think Fire Emblem has its own rules and very much sticks to them.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I know they're working on the next one.
Well, they better be. The last two have done so well.
I'm really curious to see if this is now a Switch game or if we're continuing the 3DS lineage of this franchise.
We've had two. Yeah, we've had two.
We had
3DS.
2 games on the 3DS.
We've actually had like 5 if you count how many chapters was Fates. Because Fates was, well, 4. Because Fates was, Birthright, Conquest, Revelations. I'm kidding.
That's what it's called. Yeah, good. What's your number 1, man?
All right, so I changed it. I punked out. I initially had, I'm going to say why I changed it in a minute. I initially had Pokemon Gold and Silver on here, just because it's one of the best, I think it's one of the best sequels in all of video game history. Yeah. Taking the initial concept of what is Pokemon and building it into something really, really, really substantial. But I decided to instead supplant and change that with Castlevania Aria of Sorrow.
Okay.
Which, to me, the Metroid-like, I guess I should just say Metroidvania. I've never been a fan of the term, but that genre is a huge interest of mine.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of big labyrinth-like worlds and trying to find all the keys you need to get through them. Really enjoyed, for example, like Guacamelee, or really enjoyed, to some extent, Strider, until I realized that the doors are color-coded, and I just kind of don't like knowing what item works where. I like kind of putting it together myself and mapping it myself. But anyway, Aria of Sorrow is the first time that I felt Konami, and specifically Iga, recaptured the spark of Symphony of the Night in a portable game. I think that the launch game for Game Boy Advance, which was Castlevania, I forgot, something of Way Too Dark Screen.
Yeah.
something Way Too Dark Screen.
Yeah.
But then there was Harmony of Dissonance after that, and that one didn't.
Dawn of Sorrow?
No, that's the DS one.
That's the DS one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Whereas on Game Boy
one.
Advance, Circle of the Moon was the one we were thinking about. I call it Circle of the Dark Screen.
Yeah.
Castlevania Aria of Sorrow managed that balance of, okay, colorful graphics, here's something that looks good on a portable screen. With Harmony of Dissonance, I think they just turned the controls up way too high.
Yeah.
I think they tried a little too hard to make it noticeable. And also, I wasn't pulled in as substantially by like Just Belmont and the cast. Whereas I like the idea of Castlevania in the future. Main character's name is Soma Cruz. Dracula's been dead forever. Yeah. And you have this storyline where, hey, guess what? You're the next reincarnation of Dracula if you go the wrong way. No pressure, but we have to make sure that doesn't happen. And they have a really good labyrinth to explore in that one. They had guns in that one as a weapon. That was the strangest thing.
Right, yeah.
But the idea was Castlevania in the future. Alucard is like a businessman, like in a suit. There were so many different pieces of Castlevania history that ultimately made me care about it a lot. And I played the heck out of it. I also loved the spirit system they had, where you basically, by attacking certain enemies, they can randomly drop a spirit type. You had 3 categories you can fill, and you had special abilities that they gave you. I really liked it. I always loved Symphony of the Night. It will forever be one of those games I will never forget playing.
Rightfully so, yeah.
Metroid Fusion almost got up on this list, but I have issues with, obviously its chattiness, but also some of its linearity I can definitely take issue with. Zero Mission doesn't belong on here because it's a remake. To me, it's not original enough.
I thought about both of those games.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, with Castlevania, I would have put Dawn of Sorrow in my 5 too, but I like
Aria more.
Decided to bump it out. Like there are so many good games, right?
Absolutely.
Like talking about the games that didn't make it, right? Like just Mario Kart and Phoenix Wright and they're
The World Ends With You.
The World
DS.
Ends With You. They're all
incredible.
these, for many people, that's their number one game, and I can understand that. There are definitely a lot of great games.
Yeah, I had Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, Monster Hunter 4 at one point.
Yeah.
Mother 3.
You can put Mother 3 on there if you go into Japan. The sad thing about your list is that there's only one game franchise on that list that is still active. Everything else is gone. There hasn't been a new WarioWare. There hasn't been a new classic Castlevania. It's amazing how good those games were. The 2D games were so good. On Game Boy Advance, on DS, they were awesome. And it's sad that is gone, right? There hasn't been a new
Elite Beat hasn't happened in forever. Rhythm Heaven just got a game.
Rhythm Heaven did, and Animal Crossing obviously is going to be continued, but we haven't seen a new one in a while.
Castlevania, we don't know what the future of that series is. Iga's got Bloodstained going on, so hopefully that will be the future of that series.
But that's not
it remains
a
to be
lead
seen
title
if
for a
that's
handheld.
Well, it's also remains to be seen if it's a Switch game or not. He has it listed as a Wii U game, but they have to come to that decision when they get there and talk to the backers, because backers paid for that game. And that's the version they backed. I agree
good
with
choice.
You. Yeah,
good choice.
I almost put Drill Dozer on this list. I love that game. I wish Game Freak made more games not called Pokemon, because Drill Dozer, and even oh my God, Pocket Card Jockey. How could that not be on your list?
I flew to LA last week and I played it again.
How'd that go? Did you get the Elvis horse?
It's so good. It's still so good. It's mean and makes you really mad sometimes when you like mess up just because you're not paying attention, because you're not concentrated. But it's just such a clever little game, like something that is so simple, playing solitaire, to be expanded to be this horse racing game. I really dig that title. Yep. I think a lot of people overlooked it and didn't play it because it is cards and horse racing, which by the way, I'm not into horse racing. I'm not into card games per se, but that combo is just really good.
All right, well, we've got to wrap up, but if you're listening or watching, why don't you send in your 5 sort of handheld games on Nintendo platforms or on Nintendo handheld? What are your 5 favorite games on a Nintendo handheld device? Let us know either in the comments or let us know via email, nvc@ign.com. Put in the subject line, top 5 Nintendo handheld games. Or I guess that's kind of misleading because it's not only Nintendo games. Make sure you include third parties in there. That's a big deal.
But on a Nintendo handheld, don't cheat.
Yeah, no cheating. And props and shout out to Vanilla Light again for posting the topic, because I thought it was a really smart idea. We're actually watching more of our social feeds for that stuff. We've got another one for next week, but we're going to save it for next week, so I'm not going to tell you what it is. But tell us, what were your top 5 handheld games of all time on a Nintendo system?
By the way, I'm disappointed you're not wearing a NVC shirt. We gotta
talk about that. Yeah, what's up?
So if you go to store.ign.com, sorry for the self-promotion, but some of you guys have asked about that. On store.ign.com, you can now get the official NVC shirt. It's got the NVC logo. There's also a welcome logo that you can order there. So, we did a store with our partners at Shirt Punch. There's Beyond and Unlocked and Game Scoop and all that kind of stuff too. But I really like the welcome shirt. I want that one.
You were behind that. I had nothing to do with that.
I like that.
Yeah, no, we finally have shirts.
Know.
Yeah, it also ended up a sticker in the IGN
app. Yeah. Well, no, if you use an iPhone, iMessage stickers. You can use the welcome sticker.
About them Google Message
I snuck that in without telling you.
Oh yeah, no, I know. Yeah. Well, look, you finally have a way to get the shirt. Get the shirt. I know I plan to, but definitely, if you're a big fan of the show, you'll like it. Lastly, you can leave us feedback. Email us at nvc@ign.com, or leave us a review on iTunes or on Google Play, which I finally found where our listing is. So now I may actually start checking those reviews. Need to. Lastly, you can find us on Twitter. You can find myself, you can find Pear at
IGN.
You can find myself at Jose_Otero. Thank you so much for listening, watching, supporting. We'll see you next week with more Nintendo Voice Chat.